Sure. Here is section 1 of your script with exactly 500 words, crafted in a direct, emotionally engaging, and concise storytelling style, without repeating ideas or adding fluff. When I moved back to my hometown after my divorce, I told myself it was for a fresh start. New job, quieter life, familiar streets. What I didn't expect was Ethan, my cousin's son. He was 24, charming in that effortless way, with a quiet kind of confidence that made people lean in when he spoke. We hadn't seen each other in years. Last time, he was just a teenager, awkward and lanky. Now he was a man, and I noticed. At first, I brushed it off. He was family, technically. I mean, not closely, my cousin's son, not someone I ever grew up with or spent much time around. But still, the thought alone made me feel wrong. But the attraction wasn't one-sided. I caught him looking at me more than once, holding eye contact a second too long, saying things that felt just on the edge of flirtation. I'd laugh them off, pretend not to notice the way my stomach flipped when he said my name. Then came that one evening. A family dinner, casual, noisy with laughter and kids running around. I stepped outside to breathe, wine glass in hand. Ethan followed. Said he needed air too. We stood in silence at first. Then he started talking about school, his frustrations, how no one ever really heard him. I listened. He looked at me like I was the only person who had ever truly listened. And for the first time in years, I felt seen. That night changed everything. From that point on, we kept finding excuses to talk. At family events, at random coffee shops. Always accidental run-ins. I told myself we were just talking, that I was imagining things. But the tension grew louder, heavier. I caught myself checking my phone too often, wondering if he'd texted. I started dressing differently when I knew he'd be around. I hated how much I cared. Hated how much I liked that I cared. The moment we crossed the line wasn't dramatic. It was a simple touch, his hand brushing mine, then staying there a little too long. The look in his eyes told me he wasn't confused. He knew what he was doing. And I didn't stop him. I should have. I thought about it. I told myself to walk away, to block his number, to avoid the family gatherings. But I didn't. I let it happen. I wanted to feel alive again. I told myself it was temporary, harmless, just two broken people finding comfort. But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. I wasn't just falling for someone I shouldn't have. I was choosing to. Every time I answered his messages, every time I leaned into those conversations, every time I let the line blur a little more, I was making a choice. And it felt dangerous. It felt wrong. But it also felt like the first real thing in years. Let me know when you're ready for section 2. Here is section 2 of your script with exactly 500 words, continuing the story directly, maintaining emotional intensity, and staying concise and to the point. We became something unspoken. No titles, no promises, just late-night messages and secret meetings that made my heart race. He never said he loved me, and I never asked. It wasn't that kind of arrangement. We were careful, quiet, cautious. But when we were alone, nothing about it felt quiet. He touched me like he had something to prove. He looked at me like I was the only person in the world. In those moments, I forgot the consequences. I forgot the shame. He started calling me during odd hours. I'd lie in bed, listening to his voice, sometimes saying nothing, just breathing. Sometimes he'd tell me about his day, or something small that reminded him of me. I didn't realize how starved I'd been for attention until he gave me his. And when he wasn't there, I felt it like an absence, too loud to ignore. We met in places where no one knew us. It became a game, watching over our shoulders, waiting until the coast was clear before reaching for each other. There was a thrill in the secrecy, a sick, addictive kind of rush. I started craving the moments in between more than the moments themselves. The planning, the waiting, the almosts. He wasn't like other men I'd known. He didn't make promises. He didn't over-explain. He made me feel wanted without trying. And I was tired of being the one who always tried. With him, it felt easy until it didn't. He never talked about the future. I ignored it at first. I didn't want to ruin it by asking the wrong questions. But the silence around, "What are we?" began to hurt. I'd watch him laugh at family gatherings and feel like a stranger standing in the same room. I couldn't show anything. Couldn't touch him. Couldn't let the jealousy slip out, even when other girls hovered too close. I was supposed to be invisible. That was the deal. And still, I couldn't stop. I told myself it was just physical, but that wasn't true. The emotional part was the problem. I started thinking about him, constantly, wondering who else he was texting, what he was doing when I wasn't around. I hated how obsessed I became. I hated the version of myself I was turning into, jealous, insecure, anxious. I stopped seeing other people. Not that I had many options, but even when someone showed interest, I brushed them off. It felt like cheating, even though I knew deep down he wouldn't do the same. I knew I was more invested than he was, but I kept pretending we were on the same page. He made me feel like the center of his world in private. But in public, I was no one. Just his cousin's older relative. And I convinced myself that was enough, that the scraps were better than nothing. That love, if this even was love, was supposed to hurt a little. But I was already falling apart, and I hadn't even realized it yet. Let me know when you're ready for Section 3. Here is Section 3 of your script with exactly 500 words, continuing the story with focus, emotional precision, and no repetition or fluff. Things changed without warning. His texts became shorter, his replies slower. The late-night calls stopped. I told myself he was busy, overwhelmed, maybe going through something. I gave him space, thinking it would pass. But deep down, I knew. I knew the way people pull away when they're already halfway gone. I asked him if everything was okay. He said yes. Said I was overthinking. That made me feel small, like I was being dramatic for noticing the distance he was trying to hide. But it wasn't hidden well. He started canceling plans. Forgot things I'd told him just days before. The softness in his voice turned into impatience. Still, I clung to hope. I didn't find out through him. I saw it in someone else's story. A tagged photo. Him, arm around a girl I'd never seen. Smiling, comfortable, out in public. No secrecy, no shame. My chest tightened in a way I can't describe. I clicked through her profile. She wasn't just someone new. She was someone he was proud of. Someone he could post. I didn't confront him right away. I watched from a distance. Counted the days he didn't mention her. Measured the lies by silence. When I finally brought it up, he didn't deny it. He looked me in the eye and said, "I didn't think we were exclusive." That sentence hit harder than anything else he'd ever said. Like everything we'd shared meant nothing. Like I had imagined it all. Asked him how long. He said a few months, which meant everything he had with me overlapped with her. I wasn't the secret anymore. I was the side piece. I wanted to scream, cry, hit something, but I just stood there, frozen in disbelief. He said I knew what this was from the beginning, that we both knew it couldn't last, that it was just a phase, a mistake. I could barely breathe. I had risked everything for him, my dignity, my peace, my sense of self. And he had written it off like a brief distraction. The shame hit me next, not just because of what he did, but because I let it happen. I had ignored every warning sign, every instinct, just to hold onto a fantasy. I thought I was different. I thought I mattered, but I was just convenient, easy to hide. I drove away that night without saying a word. My hands were shaking. My heart felt like it had caved in. I kept replaying every moment in my mind, wondering which ones were real and which ones were rehearsed. I couldn't tell anymore. The betrayal wasn't loud. There was no fight, no dramatic ending. Just silence. Indifference. Like I had never existed. That's what hurt the most. Not the fact that he moved on, but the way he erased me like I was never there to begin with. I had never felt more disposable in my life. Let me know when you're ready for Section 4. Here is Section 4 of your script with exactly 500 words, bringing the story to a sharp and emotionally grounded close without repetition or unnecessary elaboration. I didn't tell anyone. Not my cousin, not my friends. I carried the weight alone because explaining it out loud would make it real in a way I wasn't ready for. I stopped going to family gatherings. I muted his number. I removed him from everywhere, but not before I looked one last time at our messages. It was pathetic, I know. Reading words that once made me feel wanted now felt like reading someone else's delusion. I hated how long it took me to let go. Not of him, of the version of myself that allowed this. The version that settled for being hidden, that ignored the pit in her stomach, that kept quiet while she was being pushed aside. I had convinced myself that love was sacrifice, that the pain was part of the price. I was wrong. He moved on easily.
Publicly.
Like I never happened. And maybe to him, I didn't. Maybe I was just a mistake he buried. But I lived through every second of it. I remembered every lie, every half-truth, every moment I held back what I really wanted to say. I gave too much, and he took without hesitation. But eventually, the silence became a kind of peace. I started doing things alone again. Not because I was waiting for someone to show up, but because I needed to hear my own thoughts without him in the background. I started writing. I started walking without checking my phone. I started sleeping without crying. I forgave myself slowly. Not all at once, but piece by piece. I stopped blaming myself for being vulnerable. That wasn't the crime. Trusting someone doesn't make you weak. Letting them disrespect you repeatedly does. I had to learn the difference the hard way. I thought about telling him what he did to me. Thought about texting one last time just to make him feel something, guilt, regret, anything. But I didn't. Because I finally understood he wasn't capable of giving that. You can't force someone to value what they never saw as valuable. And I wouldn't beg to be seen anymore. What hurt the most wasn't that he cheated. It was that he let me believe I mattered. Even when he knew I didn't. That quiet kind of betrayal, the kind done with a smile, with soft words, with just enough affection to keep you hoping, that's the kind that leaves scars. I didn't get closure from him. I had to make my own. And maybe that's what healing is. Not waiting for apologies or explanations, but deciding you deserve better even when no one says it out loud. He faded into the background. Just a story I don't tell in full anymore. But some nights, when I remember how it felt to be used so gently, I remind myself I was never the one who should have been ashamed.
He was.
And he still doesn't even know it. Let me know if you'd like this turned into a full voiceover narration or need visual cue suggestions.